You do a lot of stuff in the fintech scene, so we have a lot of power on that table today discussing what will banks do, what will fintechs do in order to shape the financial industry. And perhaps we start with you, Kim. We saw 2008, the financial crisis. Everybody was kind of, where are banks heading? Where are they going now? 9 years later, still the same question remains. I know it's hard to have a look in the future, but where do you see the financial industry in the next years? Where are we heading? What role are fintechs playing? What do you do in order to change or disrupt your own business model?
Yeah, so thank you very much. Thanks for the kind introduction as well. So I'd say, financial services, like many industries, is going through a massive transformation. So business models are changing, the ways we used to make money are changing, interaction with fintech companies around the world, massively changing. So what I would say is kind of 2 or 3 things. One is a bank is really a technology company. So technology runs everything that we do on a day-to-day basis, whether it's processing payments, processing trades, interacting with our customers globally. So FinTech we view is a cooperation. So we've set up our company to cooperate with FinTechs around the world, which I'll talk about in more detail. I would say the other thing is automation is going to significantly change this industry. And so, the data has shown it's everywhere between 40 and 50% of every kind of manual job can be automated and will be automated in our lifetime. So what people are doing, how we're interacting with customers, how we create kind of a frictionless interaction with our customers, that's all changing. And so we've got to stay on the front foot of understanding all of those market dynamics, and that's really what we're focused on doing.
So automation and technology company. Perhaps Miriam, asking you, what is the role of fintechs? Are you disrupting the entire financial industry? Who's actually making the game here? Is it the digital giants? Is it the banks? Is it the fintechs? Is it the entire ecosystem? So who's making or who's changing the industry?
Who's changing the industry? I think there are several things that change the industry. So one time you have the platforms that change the industry, I would say, because all of those that have a really close relationship to the customers, that have the interface to the customers, they will change the industry. So platforms, for example, if you look to China, if you look what Alibaba is doing, they have built a whole platform for trade, for payments. There's everything, like a whole ecosystem that is close and that is really touching the customer, and they have massive customers. So there actually you see something that the role of the banks in Asia is really, really changing towards these platforms. Then you also see the changes through data. I mean, to be honest, I think, again, coming from the customer, the one that is winning the race that is really understanding the customer. So you can use the data, and those companies, those banks, those fintechs, whoever it is actually, that really understand the data to find the customer, to really offer the customer the right products they want, I think they are going to win. And then it's all about data platforms, but it's also the mindset of the companies, I think. Last week we had a dinner, and it was really funny. I was sitting there together with a guy from a bank, and they said, we do so many things at the moment, and we have all the technology in place, but the problem is that the people we have in our company, they're not willing to go with this change. So I also think it's a lot about culture, who's winning the race, the culture on taking the people with you to understand technology, and also that really take the chance for them. I think it's a really big issue.
Okay, Kim, you said Deutsche Bank is now a technology company, more or less, right? How do you exactly do that? I mean, we know that Google, Facebook, all they're clearly digital giants and technology companies. But now all of a sudden, how does Deutsche Bank want to transform into a technology company? You're using technology trends or AI, blockchain. How exactly are you going to do that?
Yeah, so what we're focused on is I call it 3 or 4 big buckets of work. One is keeping the company running on a daily basis. So serving our customers safely, securely, soundly, every single day. That's our responsibility, to process all the payments, process the trades, make the company actually run on a day-to-day basis. So that's kind of mission critical work. Second is relationships with fintech companies. So we've set up 4 innovation labs around the world, Berlin being one, So it's nice to be here in Berlin. Berlin, London, Silicon Valley, and also New York. And we're getting ready to venture into China as well. So we have 4 innovation labs around the world. Those innovation labs the mission of those labs is partnering with startup companies around the world, get the technology into our company. So the teams are measured on adoption and how we adopt that technology into our company. Kind of the next big topic is automation. I talked about automation, so whether it's robotic process automation, artificial intelligence, how do we drive that automation into our company? So we have many manual processes and customer interfaces that are very manual in nature. How do we drive and reduce friction of that? Another big topic for us is data. So we have loads of data, like any big corporation, loads of data. How do we start to turn that data into a revenue stream? So protecting privacy, protecting the importance of securing the customer data, but how do we turn that into a revenue stream? And the last topic that Miriam mentioned is digital platforms. So we're putting basic platforms on all of our key operating businesses and allowing open APIs and protocols to partner with companies. We've actually just announced that we opened up our APIs, our banking APIs. I think we're one of the first companies to do that. Opened up our banking APIs. We're actually starting to also share some source code. So we can co-develop content together. And so I just want to create an ecosystem where we have really strong partnerships, whether it's the digital giants, the tech giants, or the FinTechs. And we're a company that it's easy to work with if you're a startup company. So that's what we've created. And the last is on the culture. The culture is extremely important, that we create an environment where our people, all of our technical people and business people, can work together quickly to create new content. So I've got the team focused on every 4 to 6 weeks, we're delivering digital content. And in a big corporation, that's not an easy undertaking. Normally it's 18 months to 24 months. And so creating content every 4 to 6 weeks, it's what the super cool big tech firms do. And so we're trying to be in that super cool tech firm mentality.
Let me perhaps stick to the second topic you mentioned, the innovation labs, working with FinTechs and directly getting in touch with FinTechs. So partnering with FinTechs is kind of the bottom line of that. Are there any obstacles? How do you actually choose the FinTechs? Do they have to have a certain size, or do they have to have a certain maturity? Do you really go into really early stage FinTechs, or what is your approach on working with the FinTechs? How does that work? Are there any obstacles and challenges?
Yeah, I would say, obstacles on our side and then obstacles on the FinTech side. So the obstacles on the FinTech side is, they need to be at a point where they've proven out their technology. They have a few customers, I'd say, 5 to 10 customers, big customers, and they've started to prove that their technology actually works. The gift of working with a company like ours is, the gift of working with Deutsche Bank is we have customers at scale, and we have, proving out volumes at scale. So whether your technology actually works at scale in a corporation, you can get that working with us. Where a FinTech, you wouldn't necessarily have access to customers at scale, and you wouldn't have access to proving out that the technology works at scale. So that's what we try and do. And we've tried to lean out our company processes enough so it makes it easier to deal with us, because sometimes it's not, the procurement process and some of these other processes makes it painful to interact with a large corporation. So we've tried to lean out those processes.
So what you're looking for in FinTechs is technology, for example, right?
I'm looking for technology.
Which you cannot develop by yourself. So you're bringing on the table the customer base and...
I'd say kind of 2 things. One is we're looking for the technology that we can adopt in our company. And then the second is, are there companies that we actually want to invest in? So we've started doing that. We have handfuls of investments that we've made. We'll continue to scale that up as we progress.
Okay. How is it from the FinTech side, working with a bank? I mean, you're in the corporate atmosphere as well, part of, I think it is Bain and Otto. You're working with them already. So how is your experience in working with bigger corporates, but also especially with banks? And what are, in your opinion, the obstacles, challenges you face?
And to be honest, when RatePay is now 8.5 years old, so we're not really such a small and young fintech anymore, but we're still fintech. So when we all started, it was really difficult to work with banks because most of them, to be honest, were at that time very, let's say, they said, oh, we're so big, you're so small, you're not really relevant for us. And it was really, really difficult also because when we started working, we're doing online installments as well. This is one part of what we do. We were looking for a bank to cooperate with. And at that time, to be honest, there was no bank that wanted to cooperate with us. And we found the Wirecard Bank here in Germany. They are more or less like a fintech bank, I would say. So they really believed in us. And for us, that was really, really good that we found finally a bank at that time to invest in us. And now, 8 years later, I mean, today we are not so small anymore. So we have, let's say, last Sunday we had 5,000 online installments. So we have a lot of data already. We do get a lot of data and we collect a lot of data. And since that, since we get more, let's say, bigger, the attraction or the interest of the banks in us is much bigger than before. So that's also something that I can see now. When you get more, let's say, you play a bigger role, then the banks suddenly start being really interested in us. So it was difficult as a small fintech.
And that has changed. So if you traveled back in time now and you see the openness and the interest of the banks now, then you would have been...
That's really good. It's really good when you see that, because 8 years ago it was not like this. There was really a behavior, and we are the banks, we do it ourselves, we do it much better. I think this has shifted now into okay, we are really open and we look for innovation and we want to cooperate. So it's not a fintech against banks anymore. It's more a fintech together with banks and find the best of both sides.
Okay, so we all love each other. The fintechs love the banks love the fintechs. Are there any things where you say, this is what we need to work on? This is clearly a thing where perhaps the bank doesn't understand the fintech, or the fintech doesn't understand the bank, or what are the issues that we need to change? Or could we just sit down and relax?
I would say, I believe in self-awareness. So I think the self-awareness on our side, on a large corporation side, is just having the openness of how do you lean out your processes so you can actually work with a fintech. I think that's one learning that we've continued to evolve. And then I think the other is, we've set up this digital factory in Sassenheim, which I'm super proud of, and it includes technologists, business people, fintechs. And so how do you create a collaborative working environment where you can actually work together to create value for both the fintech company and the large bank? And so I think that those working together models need to continue evolving in large corporations, banks, and other large corporations. So I think it's a learning, I'd say it's a learning process for both of us.
Okay, so fostering the ecosystem. Anything from your side where you see this is not working right now, even though we have improved?
What I think is actually that there has to be more and more cooperation of different kind of companies, and also companies that might have been competitors in the past. Yeah, because I mean, if we look at the platforms, if we look at what is Amazon doing, and if we're not doing something here, especially in Germany, I think we're going to lose against all the other platforms. So I think more and more companies have to go together. There are a lot of initiatives at the moment. Also, Deutsche Bank is doing this Verimi, for example. It's about big companies in Germany putting their data together and working on the identity keys. So we have, yes, it's a small fintech from Switzerland working together with Sparkasse. There is another data alliances. So I think this is a good, let's say, I don't know if this really is the way for the future, but probably you need to build something. And even if you have to really let the walls fall down of like competition or so.
So not only opening up between one single bank bilaterally with one single
maybe
fintech.
You have to share more things, and really share best practices.
It's more about perhaps Deutsche Bank cooperating with the other bigger banks and then approaching the fintechs and finding joint solutions. Is that? Do I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say the learning for me has been the digital platform creation. So if you look at the large tech companies, it's all a platform, and having products and services that plug into those platforms. And how do you increase the access of the customer base? And how do you use data to create new business models, new revenue streams? So I think that's the learning for every corporation to figure that out. And And that's really what we're focusing on. And who you would have thought was a competitor is now actually someone that you can cooperate with and create more value. And that is, I think, where the world is moving in the next 20 years. And so we've got to position ourselves technically to allow that to happen. So digital platforms, open APIs, sharing of source code, figuring out how to protect the data to then create new revenue streams. Who do we actually partner with? You know, big DAX 30 companies, companies around the world, the global tech giants. How do we actually partner with them? And that's what we're spending a lot of time thinking about and focusing on.
We just heard, you gave that example of Verimi, digital identity, where a lot of the corporates actually made a joint effort to create something new. Are there any other topics that you could think of where you say, this is where cooperation is a must? This is a topic where we all need to move together and work together, and not just one bank, one fintech, perhaps all the others, bring them on one table? Are there any topics that you could think of where you say, this is definitely one thing that we need to tackle right now?
Yeah, so from my lens, we're looking at our, I call it non-competitive advantage processes within the bank where we could cooperate with other large banks. You know, that's one example. And I've got a couple of things in flight on that. This Verimi, which is a identity and access system that was built, that we built and basically partnered with many DAX 30 companies in Germany. And the point is to allow kind of one place to go for digital identity and not have to type the passwords in 50 different times to interact with all these companies. And then you have a secure access point and you can interact with Deutsche Bank, Lufthansa, Deutsche Telekom, et cetera, et cetera. We've also started building, I call it digital products that we're white labeling and starting to sell to companies. So we've white labeled a robo-advice tool called Wise, which we have sold to an insurance company in Europe. We will continue doing that. You know, what are the digital, I call it digital products and services that we either plug into our platforms and in addition start to sell to other companies? And then what are those products and services that also plug into our platforms? And so that will continue to be the way the world evolves in banking.
Okay. Time is running. Perhaps one final and very short statement from both of you. Like, if you were able to travel in the future now, in 5 years, what does the financial industry look like? Very short. I know it's hard, but perhaps you can answer that.
If I would travel in the future, I hope I have an identity that is really safe.
You have an identity that is very safe?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I would say that the whole industry is going to massively evolve.
The industry is
And
massive.
the industry is going to massively evolve. So the way that you were interacting with banks, the methods of how you're interacting, the partnerships that banks have, that is going to massively evolve and continue to evolve in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years.
Okay, good. Fintechs and banks will still be there. It's not all running through blockchain and stuff. That's good.
Fintechs and banks will still be there.
Not all of them.
Okay, good. So thank you very much for the, I think, very lively and insightful but short discussion. Thank you all for listening, and